I think a cinema would get a lot of goodwill if it very publicly turned around to Sony or Marvel when they offered it one of the movies and just said no. Like, no, we're not having Craven. No,
You realize we lose money on these, right?
take it somewhere else. We don't want it. Fuck you. Why did you think this was a good idea? This is madness. Before we get into anything, I guess, like plot wise, though, would you agree with apparently what a Sony executive has been saying, that if you added Spider-Man to any of these movies, Madam Web, Morbius, or Craven, that would make it worse?
Well, yeah,
Worse?
if you just dropped him into the current context that the movies exist in. But if you drop Spider-Man in, it fundamentally changes the entire movie. It might be a new kind of piece of shit in the end, because we've certainly seen bad Spider-Man products, but it would improve the story, I think, just as a baseline. Like, even if the bar is here and Sony shoots for way down here anyway, they'd at least be like right here.
See, that's not what they thought. I have a quote here, which is an interesting quote, because I genuinely don't know what the fuck they're thinking. Obviously, it would take several days to unravel all of the weird sort of tangles. I'm not going to use a web pun, but the contractual stuff for Tom Holland Spider-Man. And I think everyone just assumed that he wasn't appearing in any of these movies because he wasn't allowed to. Well, a Sony insider told Variety, and here I quote directly, "There was a feeling within the studio that audiences would not accept Tom Holland's Spider-Man suddenly popping up in a live-action film that wasn't part of the MCU, especially after Spider-Man No Way Home and the Marvel Studios projects Loki and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness established definitive boundaries to the Marvel universe." They looked at Madam Web and they thought, you know what? We have to protect this from Spider-Man. That is what they actually apparently thought, anyway.
Well, what's strange is that they thought they had to use Tom Holland's Spider-Man. You do not. There are multiple Batman.
A different one.
Yeah, just use another Spider-Man. Use a Spider-Man that's fully CGI, and you don't even have to take off the fucking mask.
There you go.
Like that would improve the characters. It would fundamentally change all these movies because they have to make them heroes essentially, and they're fucking villains. They're Spider-Man villains.
You're onto something, Cynic. It would actually make no sense for him to ever appear without a mask on if they're the villains. They wouldn't know who he was.
Right, he'd kind of be in the background, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he could literally just always show up with full costume. It doesn't have to be that. I never even thought of that.
Dude, pay Andrew Garfield to voice him.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Or Tobey Maguire. I'm sure Tobey Maguire could use the work.
Dude, if they put Andrew Garfield in just as a CGI Spider-Man and they had him do the voice, it would at least amplify these movies like 10x, because they're already terrible. Like, every single one of these movies is fucking abysmally bad.
Which one? So here's a good question. Which one was the worst? Like, was it Madam Web or Morbius?
Madam Web's the best because it's funny. I unironically enjoyed Madam Web for all of its terribleness. I'd say probably Craven is the worst, because it might just be that I'm jaded and I watched it while really tired, knowing I didn't have any time to go to bed. But I was sitting there thinking, what the fuck am I doing? Why is this taking so long?
This is your life. This is your career, Platoon.
Why are we, what is going on with the buffalo and the rhino guy? We're really committing to the animal bit, aren't we? And like fucking Russell Crowe with his Russian accent saying, "Oh, my son, he's like a chameleon." And of course, at the end, he turns into a chameleon. Fuck you, film. I get that it's comic book based, but try harder.
No, I was saying in my review that this is a Sony Pictures movie through and through, because they never left the early 2000s approach to superhero films. What's campy, not that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man are anywhere near the poor quality of these movies, but they're campy. And they just kept that approach as if everyone was Sam Raimi. Like, let's just make these early 2000s-esque tropes apply to every single film we're releasing in this new Spider-Man universe, or Spider-Man-less Spider-Verse. They are all really cheesy. They're really campy. And then you mix it with the fact that they have to basically create a new character, because all of these characters are connected to Spider-Man. It's just Craven in name only. It's Venom in name only. Even Madam Web in name only. So, not that anyone gives a fuck about Madam Web, but
it was
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I thought you were done. I was going to say, it's funny because the first 10, 15 minutes, I was like, okay, maybe this won't be terrible. Because it was like...
They released the first 8 minutes online for a reason, because it's like the coolest part of the entire movie.
And then, like, as I was going on, the only thing that kept coming to mind to me was if this... And it seems like this has been a running theme with a lot of stuff lately. If this was a standalone movie where they didn't try to cram it into an existing thing and kind of took the time to be like, this is just a guy, like, this is a guy who, you know, maybe take out some of the more fantastical aspects, but like is using his abilities to try and help, you know, animals and shit. Like, you know, that in that beginning, like, oh, you're a poacher. I don't like that. Like, that could have actually been fine. And then they started going off the rails about like, right when they flashed back to him as a kid. That was right when it went off the rails.
And it was not a flashback. It was 30% of the entire.
Yeah, it was 30% of the movie. Yeah, like had they like the beginning, and like him being like pissed off at the poachers and stuff, and kind of breaking into the office with the crossbow and shit. Like that was fun. That was actually okay. And then it quickly just went. Like, whoa, what the fuck is going on now?
It did seem to commit to like quite a gritty, slightly grounded style of violence in the opening sort of 10 minutes, which I didn't mind. Like that made me think, oh, maybe this film isn't going to be really silly as fuck, because they're actually showing it feels a bit kinetic and tangible. They're doing a bit of work to try and make the fights believable. He's obviously not a good guy because of the way that he fights, and he's obviously brutal and animalistic. That wasn't terrible. Then the rest of the movie happened, and it was already bad because I'm slightly prejudiced. It's the Rick and Morty thing when he's up in the lighthouse, the guy who reads him his story, and like he talks, and then he's then cut 3 weeks earlier, and it's just disappointing because you really should start stories ideally where they begin rather than fast forwarding to where the action happens to be. But you know, you can break the rule sometimes. It's acceptable to do like 16-year earlier flashbacks. That's fine. But it has to be worth it. It has to be exceptional. You have to have a really good, grounded story reason for doing it. And that is definitely not what we got, because, correct me if I am mistaken, we get the origin story for Craven getting his powers. He gets his powers because he is in the African savannah researching lions with his mother right before she died. No.
Let's set the scene here. His mother murdered herself, and his dad said, "Your mother was a pussy. You're not going to. Your mother a pussy. Your mother was a pussy, and we're going on safari."
I like it. I cannot tell what accent you're trying to do. I love it. Please keep doing it.
I couldn't either, all the way through with fucking Russell Crowe doing whatever it was he was doing. I think it's slightly better than Ray Winston as a Russian in Black Widow. That's the nadir of people who shouldn't be doing Russian accents. But it's still he's chewing on a lot of those W's. But
he loves it. The word everybody always gets right is "Nozdrovya." That's the only one that they ever get right.
Yeah. It's the most important word because it's Russia and they only drink vodka, so you have to say it like you have to get that correct. But so it's back in time. It's him and his little brother, who is the gayest character I've seen without ever actually being told that he's gay. They go to the extent of giving him a pink turtleneck just to emphasize how pathetic he is. I'm conscious. My little avatar is wearing one, and now I have to change it because it's just no. So that
you're not closeted like this fella is.
This is true. This is true. I'm also not that pathetic, but so they're hunting, and it's like the dad wants like Craven to be a better hunter because he's the preferred son, because the other son is gay. I guess. And so they go off on their own. The two sons go off on their own, and there's some shit about like a boss lion that is legendary, and you have to kill it for some reason. It comes across them. And then Russell Crowe just teleports in and shoots it. It gets angry. It kidnaps Craven. He gets badly injured. And he gets his powers from a combination of things. He gets his powers from a drop of the lion's blood dropping into one of the wounds he got.
It was perfectly one drop of blood that just fell
perfectly into the hole. But more pressingly, he also gets it because, side story, there is a random woman called Calypso who has a generic African grandmother who reads tarot cards and also happens to have a magical vial. And she reads the tarot cards 5 minutes before this happens and says, "Oh yes, the tarot cards are telling me that you'll use this vial to heal somebody really important.
Like
so,
right now."
And so she comes across this lion with a child, and I don't even know why she's there. She's just wandered off for some reason. And she thinks, well, fuck it, I'll just give him this magical vial. And then he goes to
They were
hospital and is cured.
out taking pictures. They were out taking pictures. That was what it was.
Let's not forget too, the cards themselves basically spell out. It's not that she pieces it together. It literally spells out what's going to happen, because like the third card has a lion with like a guy in his mouth.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, this is the tower. This is the origin point. This is the struggle. It's the lion with a child in its mouth card.
Oh god! And whoever the actress was that was playing the grandmother that was giving these cards to her granddaughter was one of the worst actresses in this entire film, and that was saying something. Her line delivery was just like, "And something bad is going to happen, Calypso." It was it was Calypso is the girl, and then there's the grandmother, and they're sitting there, and apparently they're rich as fuck, and they have a safari, like a safari range home or some shit, and it's right next door to where Russell Crowe is hunting. So you can't get more convenient than that.
It was not
Freckle Jesus. It was
not
sad.
Freckle
No,
Jesus.
I mean, kind of similar character type though, in the fact that it wasn't really a character. That entire subplot, because then so he gets healed, and his dad takes him back from hospital, and he's pissed off with him because he didn't shoot at the lion. So Russell Crowe killed the lion and hung its head on the wall to teach him a lesson. And then the kid is just like, he really hates dad now, so he goes to leave home. But he leaves his wimpy gay little brother at home, even though he knows that his dad will basically abuse him.
He abandons the shit out of his brother.
He could have taken him with him. There's no reason for him not to do that, but he doesn't, because we need to be setting something up for later. And he goes off and decides that his life's mission now is to just go around taking out evil poachers. So, like, his mum used to own some kind of...
I
can only describe it as a greenhouse in the middle of the Siberian jungle. And that's where he has his bat cave, which just has lots and lots of knives in it. And he goes around killing hunters. But then one day he decides that like he has more important things to be doing than just killing hunters. So he goes after criminals. And then that brings us back to the prison scene with which we open. And it turns out he had arranged to get himself in the prison so he could take out one of the head honchos that was in there. And he goes around just taking out evil people who hunt. But that fortuitously coincides with the B plot, I guess, with Calypso, because she becomes a lawyer in London who also has secret magical vials of healing goo that she doesn't tell anyone.
Black girl magic.
If she told anyone that she had the secret magical vials of healing goo, she could potentially have saved all of humanity from disease, but she didn't want to do that because, I don't know. But her lawyer job also involves keeping in regular contact with mercenaries, and like some evil guy killed one of her friends, and Craven finds this out, and then he goes to the funeral, and he's like, "Hey, do you know who did that?" And she's like, "Yeah, they're bad." And he says, "Well, I kill bad people." And she's like, "Oh, I'm kind of attracted to you now." And then they kind of team up.
And he says,
"I have a still frame for this."
His name is Sergei Kravinov, and he decides to go by Craven now. And he makes sure to distinguish the fact that it's Craven with a K, as if she was not aware of the fact that his last name's fucking Kravinoff already.
This was the still frame I was telling you about, Cynic. That was the greatest closed caption of all time. That was on the.
Oh no.
So he gives her the card back, and she's like, "Oh, this is my grandmother's card. I still carry the deck on me." And I rewound it. I was like, "Did that say I carry the dick on me?" I was like,
"Yeah, I forgot to include that in my review too. Like, she happens to still carry a giant fucking deck of tarot cards in her purse at all times that her grandmother gave her when she was a kid."
Yeah, I mean, here you go, detachable penis. Yeah, I mean, you could take this several ways. It's obviously not the real line, but I actually had more fun reading for the bad translations of the auto generated captions. Those are always hilarious.
That's good shit.
I don't have any more. That was the only still frame I grabbed. So go on, Platoon.
It's a very, very good still frame. I will be using that if I ever get around to doing a video on this.
I'll send it to you.
Much obliged. I'm trying, where the fuck are we plot wise? So yeah, so he meets her,
Calypso. Yeah, he meets her.
Calypso, and he's like, if you join me, then I'll murder the evil people. And she's like, well, she's a lawyer, so she should say no. And
Well,
also,
no,
that's a strong opening pitch. You know, I kill people for a living.
It's a good one.
And by the way, I kill people who don't actually do anything particularly illegal. So like, hunting is legal. And he said, well, I think that's bad, so I killed them. He's the Luigi Mangione of the Marvel spin-off universe. And she's into that because she doesn't like the evil people either, because one of them killed her friend for some reason. And so they sort of slightly they team up later, but if I might be getting my order of events confused. So he goes then to little brother's birthday dinner, right? His little gay brother obviously has his own piano bar.
He admits to abandoning his brother when he was a little kid, so he just shows up once in a while now as an adult to really fucking drive the knife in. I like that.
And I assumed we were setting something very important up because, you know, surely he doesn't wear a mask when he goes around killing people, and like he doesn't seem to want to hide his identity. So surely he doesn't just walk around in public looking like someone who goes around killing people in public, because that's silly and he'd be spotted. And also wouldn't his dad have wanted to find him, and wouldn't he be trying to hide from his dad? And surely he wouldn't ever risk exposing himself to his evil tyrant father who would probably want to take vengeance. But no, he just turns up at the dinner as well. They just meet up once a year and nobody really gives a shit. His dad's just like, yeah, you're still, I can't do the accent.
You're still pussy.
That's the one. He still wants him to take over the business, the evil drug trafficking / hunting business. And Craven's like, no, I don't like that. And
I don't want to do that.
/ hunting business.
He's got his fingers in all of the many pies, does Russell Crowe, and you can tell because he's really fat. And
he is,
but then
big man.
God, how does this even? So tangent, and I say tangent, it is still the plot allegedly. There is a group of people trying to muscle in on Russell Crowe's evil drug / hunting business cartel, right? So this is, we saw him in the flashback. They did Iron Man 3. You know Iron Man 3, where the guy whose superpower is just to get really hot sometimes, he meets Tony Stark in the before times and offers him a business proposal and is rejected, and that sets him up with his villain motive. It's the same thing. This is Rhino's origin story. So Rhino in the flashbacks, like a weedy, greasy guy who's like, I want in your business, and Russell Crowe says no. And then he comes back and he's met some doctor guy who's turned him into a rhinoceros. Comic book movies, aren't they?
Miles Warren. That's the name. Little Easter egg.
And he wants to take over the empire, and he does this by kidnapping gay son. Because Craven was staying there, but he had to go outside because he couldn't sleep, because he tried to lie on the sofa and he kept getting woken up by generic African noises coming through the vent. It's just, could you not try harder?
And he wants to kill Craven because it's known to mobsters that if you're on Craven's list, the only way you ever come off is by dying. So he wants to preemptively kill Craven. And that's Rhino's motivation. And Rhino also relates everything that he ever talks about to being a rhino. So, for example, like if he was making breakfast or taking a shit, he'd be like, I'm taking a shit like a rhino. And it's like
rhino shit
like a rhino. Gives me runny shits like a rhino.
For visuals, everybody, it's, if anybody remembers Pollux Troy from Face Off, the younger brother of Nicolas Cage's character. That's the actor who plays him. He looks exactly the same, just with his haircut short.
He does look like he's having a lot of fun playing that role, though. He's kind of chewing up the scenery in a few moments.
Well, because they probably just told him to ad-lib all his lines and just say, relate this to Rhino. And so he was just having fun coming up with, like, what's your strategy, Rhino? Well, when I see things, I just charge at them like a rhino. I am impervious to pain like a rhino.
Except that it hurts so much that I have to stop it.
I get really horny and it hurts like a rhino.
Like a rhino.
This is the level of dialogue we're dealing with in this movie. It's not even that much of a stretch. But the reason he knows who Craven is, you would think is really obvious, right? Because Craven doesn't wear a mask and he kills people in public. So surely he's like, his face is well known. But he's simultaneously a myth that no one believes in, and also not a myth because he can be tracked. And someone slips a USB drive under Rhino's henchman's hotel room's door which has video footage from the prison in Siberia. And all they've done is that they've just taken a freeze frame and then someone stick a graphic over it, which says like 85% match for Kraven the Hunter. Like, how the fuck does that work? Because unless you know what Kraven the Hunter looks like, you can't match a face to it. But we need that because that moves the plot along. You might be thinking, I wonder who could have put the stick under the door of the evil henchman. And that's a twist we'll save for later. No one thinks about it until the scene when it becomes really relevant. So yeah, he wants to take over. So he kidnaps Gay Sun, and then Craven goes after Gay Sun, but they escape with Gay Sun in a helicopter. I'm trying to think how we then so then he's like, well, I know a lawyer woman. Lawyers know mercenaries. So I'm going to call her and I'm going to ask her to ask her mercenary friends which mercenary stole the gay kid. And she does. And she's like, right, I've got it. But the person, her contact in mercenary land, is betraying her to a guy called the Foreigner, who just shows up on some stairs.
And not just show up on the stairs. He was apparently just there during their 2-sentence exchange. And as soon as she leaves, the guy turns around and the Foreigner's standing there and he goes, did she buy it? Like, dude, you're fucking listening. You're standing there the entire time, you creep. The Foreigner is introduced, and he's called the Foreigner because he's not from around here. That's very clever.
Nice reference to Futurama right there.
But yeah, that's
and his power set is confusing. So I assumed when I first watched it, well, he was just kind of fucking around. His power set doesn't do anything useful. What he does is, and I guess this is comics accurate. I don't know anything about these comic characters, so I'm guessing it is comic accurate because it's quite shit. He takes off his glasses and he says 1, 2, 3, and he disappears. And then he reappears behind them and kills them. And you might be thinking, well, that's needlessly flamboyant. Why didn't you just take out a gun and shoot them? And he doesn't do that because he has also a sense of style.
There's a point where he counts 1, 2, 3, and he takes the guy's gun and like turns it around so it's facing him. And you think, it's
the guy's going to shoot himself.
Yeah, you've seen it before. You think the guy's going to shoot himself, and he's when the 3 count is up, he's like, huh, and that's it. So that's all that fucking happens.
It's so weirdly cut away from that scene, because that's when he's going to meet Rhino, and he tells, because Rhino knows that even though Craven is a myth that no one believes in, Foreigner has been tracking him for his entire life, because at some point Craven killed Foreigner's mentor, I guess. So he's taking vengeance, which he does by studying Craven's methods, even though no one knows who Craven is, and there's no evidence but loads of evidence. But it's so weirdly cut, because he goes to the meeting, and then he's like, hi. And he's like, hi. And then we just cut away back to fucking Siberia or somewhere, and that's it. It's just like, why even show the scene? That was pointless, except to establish that Foreigner has these weird powers that only make life tougher for him, and which will come back to haunt him at the end when he uses them rather than just shooting Craven in the head, and consequently dies because he wastes too much time. It's like the equivalent of villain monologuing.
Oh, yes. And not only that, the 100-pound lawyer has the ability to pull back a bow with like a 100-pound draw weight on it. It's and that's how she kills Foreigner, because Craven doesn't actually kill the bad guy. She kills the bad guy, or at least the sub boss, I should say.
Yeah, this is jumping to what they say. Like, this is when we go back to Siberia. They've tracked down gay kids.
And am I incorrect that after he escapes, he basically is just like, you know what? Fuck his brother. Like, I don't even give a shit about my brother. And he just like goes back to Siberia. He gives up on searching for him, doesn't he?
Well, because there's a bit where they try to lure him into a trap in Turkey.
Right.
And so he goes to somewhere outside Ankara. It turns out to be a trap. They shoot a rocket at the place he's in. He doesn't take any damage at all. It's not threatening. I was looking at it thinking, is this the second act low point? Because I don't think this movie has acts, and it wasn't. So, so that's fine. Then they go back to Siberia, I think, because they have no further leads, right? And then, so they're going back there to sort of restock and retool, and then they'll try and track Brother down afterwards, I think. But they sort of, so it culminates when they get lured to like near this magical greenhouse in Siberia, and they're taking their gay brother there. They get attacked by a leopard, and that enables gay brother to temporarily escape, and then that sets the stage for a fight. During the fight scene, Craven gets shot with some magical vials of evil poison goo that make him hallucinate spiders. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if you had the shot, why did you use slow-acting poison rather than just shooting him? And the answer is, if we'd shot him, then the film would be over, so we have to drag it out. So he hallucinates a bit, and then the foreigner gets him, and he's like, aha, you'll collapse in like half an hour because of asphyxiation from the neurotoxin. Because that's so much better than a bullet, which would collapse your brain in a nanosecond. And then he stands over him, and he uses his fucking mind screwy powers again rather than killing him. Then he pulls a gun, so he's going to shoot him anyway. He pulls a gun, and he says 1, 2, and then he gets shot by Calypso, who says 3, motherfucker, and then he's dead. That's not even that. That is actually in the movie. This is how they write. And yeah, and then gay brother gets recaptured temporarily, but it's fine because then he summons what's his name? Craven summons a horde of bison, and bison take out the truck and take out the rhino, and then he finishes off the rhino, and then he rescues gay brother, and you're thinking, okay, that was pointless, but at least we've reached the end of the movie, right? No, we haven't. No, we haven't. No. So 2 like end bits. Back in Siberia, he tracks down Russell Crowe, fat Russian dad who he doesn't like, because he realized at some point preceding that it was his dad who stuck the USB footage under the door of Rhino's henchman, because his dad, who wants to be the toughest fighter legend ever, realized that Rhino was coming after him, thought he's not strong enough to kill the rhino, but his son is, so he will frame his son to set the rhino on his son, so the son can kill the rhino, and then they'll be safe, and the son can take over the business. And then Craven said, well, that was a shit move. I'm not going to kill you, but what I will do is take all of the bullets out of your gun, and then summon, I think it's a bear. Is it a bear that kills him?
It's a bear.
Yeah, it was like a grizzly bear, yeah.
So a bear kills Russell Crowe, and we're still not done. No because then we have the thrilling flip in character right at the end with gay brother, Chameleon. This was set up because he was called Chameleon earlier in the movie by his dad, and he could mimic people's voices. At some point, he has also learned that he can just, well, he goes to visit the evil doctor who turned Rhino into Rhino, and now he can turn into other people. And he tells Craven that you say you're better than dad, but you're just the same. You're both evil. You're both big game hunters. Fuck you. I'm taking over daddy's business. Bye-bye. And then Craven puts on a jacket that his dad left him and then sits there showing off his abs. And that's the end of the movie.
That is
I don't
the
think
movie.
I don't think you need to do a video now. Just clip all of that together of you explaining it, and you're done. It's.
I mean, there's probably bits we've missed, but that's basically the movie. Yeah.
One little detail that I picked up that I thought was hilarious. So the facial recognition technology never had the same number anytime they showed that image again. The first time it was like 87% or 97%. And then at the very end, it was like 99.3.
It's getting more accurate as it goes. It's a learning machine.
Yeah, that's the same picture. The picture is still the same. I don't know how you think this is.
I really liked that he's supposed to be the best tracker in the world. So essentially, like, you know, he's the world's greatest detective. Fuck Batman. But you never see once how he tracks or does anything. He finds some footprints at one point, and he's like, eh. And that's how he tracks whoever the fuck. But otherwise, he just uses that slasher movie Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers teleportation ability and just kind of appears wherever the fuck he needs to be at any given time.
There's one instance where he uses a useful skill for tracking that he doesn't use later in the movie when it would be even more helpful. So there's the bit where he's hunting down the poachers and a couple of them drive off in their truck, and because he has like all of the animal powers, he uses his eagle vision and he looks at the license plate. And I'm thinking, well, okay, we know he can do that. That's useful, right? So when he loses the car carrying gay brother, you're thinking, surely he can just do the same thing. Like, why doesn't he just track the license plate? But he doesn't do that because if he did that, then we wouldn't need Calypso, and we have to have her in because we have. I don't know why. We have to have.
We
her
have
in the
to
movie.
have her so that she can talk to the actual helpful third party, which is like her contact.
Yeah, but yeah, true.
Instead of him just skipping over and the middleman, which is Calypso, and going right to the third party himself,
which would have been much more efficient and shortened the movie considerably.
It would have, yeah.
I'm trying to decipher at this point because toward the end, I think I'd given up on notes for this movie. I'm trying to work out what this is in reference to. I've got like just single like generic final battle. I think I know what that refers to. But the next line is just retardo exclamation point. And I don't know what that's in reference to. I'm gonna have to go back and figure it out.
Is it how awful the Rhino looks?
Possibly.
Because
I think the exclamation
really
mark is probably trying to tell me something, but it's probably a dumb line, I guess. Yeah, Rhino looks quite awful. I kind of want to like the fact that they used his skin as the suit, so he didn't have to wear something generic. But at the same time, it doesn't look great. But then nothing in the movie looks great. It looks really cheap.
Yeah, it looks really horrific. Does anyone know if they had to reshoot this movie?
Probably.
I don't remember hearing anything about reshoots for this.
Wasn't it delayed by like 2 years?
Yeah, that was what's that also blew me away once I saw the movie of like, wow, they delayed this in hopes like, did they think they really had something here and they delayed it in hoping like this would make the money? Because it was delayed due to the strikes, so they weren't going to be able to have anyone to advertise the movie. They weren't going to be able to send people out on carpets. So they pushed it back due to that, but you knew what kind of movie you had on your hands, so why even bother? Especially to just dump it out the way they did. I heard they removed screens because they knew the projections were so horrible.
I did just Google it. Apparently, the movie did undergo strategic reshoots to ensure its quality.
Yeah, sharpen the characters and tighten the plot.
I would believe it if it was to ensure its shittiness, because they did a bang up job.